Then there was another rumor that she was not only pregnant, but potentially pregnant by a young baller.
Vanessa Bryant is being dragged online for doing what every widow is eventually expected to do: move forward with life. It all started with a leaked video suggesting she might be pregnant, but that was just the spark. What followed was a wildfire of speculation, gossip, and judgment. The identity of her rumored new partner revealed, and once that hit the internet, it sent people spiraling. It began with a grainy paparazzi photo and a tweet from an anonymous gossip account captioned, "Just enough to go viral, but not enough to be held accountable." That tweet kicked off the current firestorm. The headline: Vanessa Bryant rumored to be pregnant by a young baller. That exact phrase was repeated by Joe Budden in a now viral podcast episode that dissected the chaos that unfolded. There were whispers that she wasn't just pregnant, but pregnant by a young basketball player. The internet exploded, not just in disbelief or speculation, but in pure discomfort. Because whether the rumor was true didn't matter. People were furious. Furious at the idea that she might be pregnant. Furious at the idea that she might be in love. Furious that she wasn't frozen in time, trapped in 2020 where they left her in their minds. Why? Because of Kobe. Because some people believe widows don't get to move on. And this next part is key. It reveals everything about what Vanessa Bryant has been up against since that tragic day when she lost her husband and daughter. One viral comment said it plainly: "I don't want to see you move on. I don't want to see Lauren London move on. I don't want to see any of y'all move on." That wasn't just one person's opinion. It was the collective fantasy of a sizable chunk of Kobe's fan base. A fantasy in which Vanessa would remain frozen in grief forever. And the moment she didn't, they turned on her, called her names, labeled her everything from disrespectful to disloyal to worse. But this isn't new. We've seen this happen repeatedly. When a widow, especially one tied to a beloved public figure, decides to live again, even years after their loss, the world treats her like she's committing a crime. Lauren London, Faith Evans. Even countless women in everyday life, who aren't famous, face the same cruel scrutiny. Society expects them to stay silent, loyal to the dead, dressed in black forever. And if they dare step outside that mold, they're crucified. Vanessa did respond to the rumors. She posted on Instagram, "I'm enjoying my summer, not pregnant." That should have been enough, but it wasn't. Because the outrage wasn't about a pregnancy. It was about control. It was about the possessive entitlement fans feel toward public figures, especially women who were once tied to icons. Let's be honest. If the roles were reversed and it was Vanessa who had passed and Kobe who was now dating again 5 years later, the internet would be cheering. They'd say he deserves happiness. He's healing. Look at his strength. But Vanessa, she's expected to stay stuck in grief. That's what makes a good widow, right? And if she finds comfort in someone who's young, successful, maybe even shares traits with the man she lost, suddenly she's labeled a gold digger, a traitor. Some even joked cruelly that Kobe balled too well for Vanessa to ever be seen carrying anything again. Not joy, not love, not even life itself. It's a twisted irony. Vanessa isn't allowed to carry anything unless it comes from Kobe. But people forget what she did carry. She was Kobe's ride or die. She stood by him during the darkest days, like the 2003 sexual assault case that nearly ruined his career. She raised his daughters. She watched him rise again. And then, in a single, cruel twist of fate, she had to bury both her husband and her daughter in the same week. And what did she do? She stood on that memorial stage just weeks later and gave a eulogy that left millions speechless. "We love you both and miss you both. Mommy." That wasn't just mourning. That was strength. That was grace. That was the world witnessing a woman carry unimaginable grief with dignity. This isn't about Kobe. This is about the fans who think they own Kobe's legacy, and by extension, the woman who helped build it. They're angry that Vanessa's future might include someone new. But let's call it what it is. What began as a flimsy rumor has evolved into something much darker, a distorted reflection of how society treats women who lose powerful men. This is bigger than Vanessa. It's a case study in how grief becomes performance, how a widow's suffering becomes public property, how her healing becomes betrayal. We aren't just talking about Vanessa Bryant anymore. This is about how society, especially when race and gender intersect, decides which women are allowed to move on and which ones must grieve forever. When white widows find love again, they get People magazine covers, Hallmark-style movies, and supportive profiles about second chances.